This meeting of the Anderson Township Board of Zoning Appeals is hereby called to order. This board was established pursuant to Section 519.13 of the Ohio Revised Code by the Anderson Township trustees to provide administrative relief to any person or entity adversely affected by the Anderson Township zoning resolution. Will the secretary please call the roll?
Steve Haber.
Here.
Fred Hayes.
Here.
Brian Johnson.
Here.
Brian Ella.
Here.
Christopher Houston.
Here.
Thank you. Thank you for coming to this meeting of the Anderson Township Board of Zoning Appeals. Please be aware that this meeting is audio and videotaped and may be carried live on television. Let me take a moment and outline our procedures. A summary of the appeal is presented by our staff. Then the appellant will be able to present his or her case. The board members may then ask questions of the appellant. After that, all persons supporting the appeal will be permitted to testify one at a time after being recognized. When those persons supporting the appeal are finished, those opposed to the appeal will then be permitted to testify and/or ask questions of the board after being recognized by the chair. All persons wishing to testify, whether for or against an appeal, may only do so after being sworn in. When testifying, each person must come forward to the podium after being recognized, speak into the microphone, and state their name, address, and any affiliation to the case. All persons testifying will be limited to 4 minutes unless a board member requests additional time. All testimony is given to the board only. No comments or questions are to be directed to the appellant or anyone else in the audience. The board will only hear new, non-repetitive evidence or questions. Should someone wish to show support of previous testimony, they may do so by following the testimony procedures and stating their support of previous testimony. Now, will all persons who may give testimony this evening please stand and raise your right hand and swear? That is, if you plan to provide testimony at tonight's meeting, if you would please stand and swear. Do you swear to tell the truth, the whole truth, and nothing but the truth, so help you God? Thank you. All right, any changes to tonight's agenda?
None. I do have one quick announcement. Last month, we had case 2, 2015 BZA, and you all tabled it. The applicant has since withdrawn that case, so you will not see it on the agenda this evening.
Okay, so the one in question that we tabled has been withdrawn. Good. Can I get a motion to approve the agenda?
So moved.
Second?
Second.
Any discussion? All those in favor signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Opposed? Good, we are ready to rock and roll. Okay, then item 2 is approval of minutes from our meeting on January 8th, 2015. And I believe there were some revisions that might have come out that were discussed.
I had one question about the changes. In the decision and journalization of case 1-2015 BZA, and it's on page 3 near the bottom, the vote was 4 yeas and 1 nay. We usually state who the nay was, and I believe that was Ms. Bechtold.
It was, and that was actually for the straw vote, and then the journalization, she did approve the journalization, so I've changed it to 5 yeas.
Okay. Okay.
Oh, interesting, okay. So the correction is their vote is 5 yeas.
5
Okay.
yeas.
Okay, good.
And, Mr. Chair, I also just gave some remarks back to staff and about a little more discussion on which we had a lot of discussion on the idea that there'd be a limit on the additional accessory structures. Was there something added in that regard?
Not since the packets went out on Friday.
Not since the packets went out, okay. So would we be voting on it as we received it in the packet?
Either that or going ahead and adding an amendment to it now to expand on
Okay.
that.
I think we should just add a sentence in the minutes. I wouldn't know who made the comment, but perhaps generally that there was discussion and that it was important to the board that there be limits on additional accessory structures.
You want it reflected in the minutes that we did restrict additional
Yeah,
accessory structures by granting the variance?
yeah, there was a good amount of discussion on that, and
Yeah.
It's in the journalization as well.
yes, it is.
Do you,
Up to
wa-
the board, if you think it's fine just being in the journalization, we don't have to delay it.
thoughts? Anyone? Good.
I think it's fine in the journalization.
Sure.
Okay.
That sounds good.
All right, well then, how about a motion to approve the minutes as amended?
So moved.
Do we have a second?
Second?
All those in favor signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Opposed? Good. All right, so approval of agenda, approval of minutes, then we are on to our first case, consideration of case 3-2015 BZA. Okay, and if the staff would go ahead and give their summary on the case.
Sure. The property is on Gamwell Drive and is zoned B2 residential. And the request this evening is for a variance from section 171.9 of our zoning resolution to allow an existing 6-foot-high privacy fence to be located within the front yard area. The location map you can see here, it is a corner lot, and that's what is determining the front yard area for this. The home faces Gamwell. However, because they are a corner lot, they've got frontage on Gamwell, as well as an additional front yard here, rather than that being their side yard. Surrounding zoning is both B residents in this area, B2 residents in this area and B residents in this area. The property is approximately .262 acres, has 92 feet of frontage on Gamwell and 124 feet of frontage on Bridges. The site is relatively flat. You can see an aerial photo of the site here, including the existing fence. So the applicant is seeking approval for this existing privacy fence, and again, within the front yard area along Bridges. Our aerial photography through Cages Online only goes back to 1996, so I can only go back that far, but we do see the fence existing at that time. And then you'll see here also a photo of the existing fence. Staff is of the opinion that the essential character of the neighborhood will not be altered, and adjoining properties will not suffer a detriment as a result of the variance. The fence has existed in this location since at least 1996. The variance will not adversely affect the delivery of government services. The property owner's predicament cannot be feasibly obviated by some method other than a variance. Without a variance, the privacy fence would have to be moved back to this corner of the house, locating it directly adjacent to the pool, which would really restrict the use of the rear yard area. The spirit and intent behind the zoning requirement would be observed and justice done by granting the variance. The location of the existing fence does account for visibility at this intersection and along Bridges, and maintains an open front yard appearance from the home on Gamwell Drive where the home does face.
Okay, thank you. Any questions of staff by the board?
Mr. Chairman, I have one. Allison, except for the location of the fence, is the height and the solid construction in compliance?
Yes, that would be perfectly fine if it were totally within the rear yard, but because it extends out into the front yard, that's what's triggering it here.
And the part of this is the definition of the side yard,
Yes.
front yard,
Yep.
backyard,
Yeah, for corner lots.
for the corner lots.
Right, okay. Anything else for staff? Would the appellant like to come and present their case? If you would, please come to either one of the podiums, speak into the microphone, state your name, address, and please present your appeal.
First off, I'd like to thank everybody for the fine review. I think she stated the case fairly. My name is Lloyd Reed. We live at 6906 Gamwell Drive. And the fence has been in existence since 1979. That was when it was originally constructed. That was before I moved in there. The fence degraded as far as appearance and construction, and I had it replaced. I didn't deliberately violate the zoning regulations. I just assumed, and we all know what that is, but I assumed that it would be okay just to replace it in the same place where it was, and that's what happened. In 98, I believe, I was notified that the fence was in violation. Started to prep everything to get all the information from the county and gather the paperwork, but I had a death in the family and a marriage, and it kind of got me off track. I lost track of it, and then when I fixed my driveway, I was notified that we had a problem again, and I wanted to get it resolved. So the reason we originally constructed the fence was privacy, the pool, and we had a couple of Rottweilers running around the backyard, 150 pounds, and thought it would be prudent to protect the neighbors from the dogs getting out. They were gentle dogs, but intimidating. It's just, it is sort of a front yard. It is a pool area, so, you know, you're wearing swimming suits and things. I like the idea of the privacy, but again, it wasn't trying to do anything illegal, just trying to take care of my neighbors. And as you can see from the pictures of the fence, when I had it reconstructed, I used cedar as the material on it because it was long-lasting and nice appearance. And also, I selected the fence style called a good neighbor fence. Actually looks better on the outside than it does on the inside. So I did have a lot of consideration with the neighbors, and I've talked with them over time. They're all here. Thank you very much for coming to support the application, the variance, and that's about it. I think if you have any questions.
Yeah, does anybody have any questions of the appellant?
So when you bought the property, there was a fence there?
Yes.
Right, and then you replaced it subsequent to that? 'cause it's
Yes.
falling apart. Yes. Okay, thank you.
All right.
Any other questions for the appellant? Okay, is there anybody else that would like to speak in favor on behalf of the appeal? Okay, seeing none, is there anyone that wants to speak in opposition of the appeal? Okay, any other questions from the board or anything? Please come back up if you would, so we can hear your testimony.
I neglected to mention, the Mortons lived directly across the street from us. They were missing at the time. I went around and talked to the neighbors about this variance or appeal for variance, and I asked them if they would sign the same paper you'll see attached to that packet, indicating their feelings regarding the fence, and I do have 10 copies of that if you'd like to have that added to the packet. All neighbors contingent to our property have in favor of the variance being granted. Would you like to have the Morton's paperwork?
Yes, please.
And I'll add to that, we've gotten 20 or so phone calls over the last 10 days on it from adjacent neighbors, and no one has expressed any opposition to it.
What were the phone calls for then?
There's a sign, what is this about? Oh, it's just the fence.
Oh, okay.
The sign in the front yard that indicates that
The
there was
notice.
the notice of the, right. Anything else from the board? Well, then, hearing no further comments, and if there's no objection from the board, I'm going to close this public hearing on case number 3-2015 BZA. To let you know a little bit what we're going to do tonight is that we do have 2 cases tonight, and we will also go in and listen to that public portion of our meeting tonight and their case, and then once we hear that, we will go back and then deliberate on both the cases. So under consideration, so you're more than willing to stay and until we get to that portion. We'd love to have you understand, look at what we're doing tonight. So then I guess what we're going on to is case number 4-2015 BZA at 7655 Clough Pike. So again, staff summary.
This is the child's residence. It is zoned B residential. And the request this evening is a variance from section 171.7 to allow a 24-foot by 30-foot detached garage within the front yard area. There's a location map, and this may be familiar to some of you. We did hear a similar case at this address approximately a year ago. So I'll go briefly through the logistics of the site itself. It's 2.97 acres and has approximately 250 feet of frontage on Clough. The topography is rolling, and there is a sharp decrease in grade at the north end towards Clough Pike. The existing use is a single-family residence, and the surrounding zoning on all sides is B residence. To the north, it's single-family uses. The south is the Foxbrook Place subdivision, also single-family. The east, single-family, and the west is single-family zoning. However, there is a conditional use church there of the Clough United Methodist Church.
There, again, the conditional use?
Yes, yeah.
Okay.
We've got an aerial photo of the site, and this would be approximately the proposed location of the structure. So the applicant is seeking a variance to approve a two-car garage, size 24 by 30, within the front yard area to the west of the existing driveway with a concrete approach. We've got a photo of what the proposed structure would look like, as well as a site plan showing the location of the proposed structure. Staff is of the opinion that the variance is not substantial. This side of the property where the garage is proposed is located directly adjacent to a panhandle which contains utilities for the new Foxbrook Place subdivision, which we can see in this location. The essential character of the neighborhood would not be substantially altered, and adjoining properties would not suffer a substantial detriment as a result of the variance. The neighbor to the east may be able to see the view from their property, but it would be farther from their structure, their residence, than if it were to be located within the rear yard area where it's typically allowed. The variance will not adversely affect the delivery of government services, and the spirit and intent behind the zoning requirement would be observed and justice done by granting the variance. The side yard of this property is not visible from Clough Pike due to the topography and existing vegetation. We've got property pictures similar to last year. Since it's this time of year, we do have snow on the ground, but you can see looking southwest kind of at the proposed location of the garage, and then north at Clough Pike.
Okay. Thank you. Any questions of staff by the board?
I was wondering if we could go back to the aerial, that one. And could you, Allison, put the cursor approximately where this is going to go? Right there. Okay. Thank you. And there's a couple other accessory structures out there, aren't there?
Yes,
Where are
within
those
the
at?
rear yard in this location.
There's one there. Is there another one further?
There is a shed. It's
north?
really hard to see on this aerial photo.
Okay.
Mr. Hayes, did you have something?
I was going to point out, I think there is an accessory structure that is probably technically in the front yard, and it's a little, right there. I think that's an accessory structure. Is that correct, Allison?
Yes.
Okay.
And when I went out to visit the property the other day, there was a camper trailer, which I guess would be in the side yard, and that's fine to park it there, is it not?
In this, they're required
Yes.
to be within the rear yard, and you can have one camper, RV, anything like that.
Okay.
The recreational vehicle is supposed to be parked in the rear yard?
Yes.
Okay. And if I remember right, the topography then slopes up as you get away from the house to the south? Mm-hmm. Okay. All right. Any other questions of staff? Okay, would the appellant like to come forth and present their case to us? If you would come up to the podium and state your name and address, and
Terry Childs, 7655 Clough Pike. And what we wanted to do, and let's start by this camper. That camper is a temporary thing there. In November, our other camper had a tree fall on it and crush it. This is another camper, and I'm working on it. I'm putting the flooring in it. The building that you're talking about, the accessory building, is a garden utensils building sitting on a concrete pad that's was already there. The whole backyard slopes off, as was said, and there's no way to put anything right back there. All the drainage from the neighbor's yard goes right through there. Foxbrook has put in a retention pond right up to our property line, which that stopped their problem of water coming down in our yard, that was fine. But the neighbor's yard, the whole thing, has water that drains into our yard. And when we had the big rainstorm a couple years ago, it actually flooded our basement. So back to what I'm trying to do is the garage up there by that tree is for my pickup truck, and I would use it as basically a wood shop. And that's what it is. It's small. I think there's a picture of what we were talking about in the garage. It is a prefab from Menards. It would be put on a slab by Schmidtco contractor. What we had, I gave this picture to Allison to get this on the board here. But what we're talking about is taking that garage and just kind of turn it more on an angle facing towards the house than being straight on, and then be set back, probably another 25 feet. The utilities you're talking about going up through the side arm of that property over, there's nothing over there, absolutely nothing for Foxbrook. It all comes in off of the Clough Pike up by Bruns Lane. The only thing that is there is a 50-foot easement that kept that piece of property at one time from being landlocked. And the only thing that is over there is where they drain off their retention pond. And that creek has always been there. And they've just used it now for the drain. The biggest thing from up where our house is, on the west side of that driveway, it drops off about 20 feet. It just rolls off over the hill. You couldn't put a garage behind our house. There's large maple trees that stand up probably 75, 80 feet tall. And it would be right in the path of the water draining from the neighbor's house. The new houses that are back there are roughly $900,000, which to me, having another building in your backyard facing them or with the back of it to them is really a good idea. And we have this property out there, we're almost sitting on almost 3 acres, that's doing nothing, again, but growing grass. And the garage would be a good-looking garage. I mean, it's not something that I'd be out there banging up myself. The only opposition that I know of to this whole thing is either what you folks bring up or what the neighbor brings up. Now, what his problem is, it's a deterrent to his property. Well, his property, and I've got pictures here if you want to see them, is full of brush, no trespassing signs, high grass, and at one time his yard used to be mowed all the way to the front of his property until he found out that part of his driveway happened to be on Gene's lot. And when the property was surveyed to put this drainage ditch on the east side of our house to try to stop the water, that's when he found out he didn't own a bunch of property he thought he did, and that was his fault. So about 4 feet of his driveway and about 30 feet long is in Gene's yard. But if he had talked to her, it would have never been a problem. She'd have offered him a permanent easement, which he didn't take advantage of, because that's his way of acting. I've been called all sorts of names. The police told me not to do anything. The lawyer told me not to do anything. And this lady told me not to do anything. But I'm telling you what, it's getting tough. And that's where you've got the email right there First of all, I have retired. I do not have a truck, which that truck never come up there in violation because it was always gone within a 10-hour period, and in a year's time, it might only stayed there overnight 10 times. The backhoe only comes there when I am using it to do work on that property, which I've been clearing on the far side. He gets upset with that. And as far as anything else that he has, he won't talk to you. He will not talk to you. Now, my wife has a picture from '87 she'd like to present, and a little story goes with it. So,
I feel like I'm always on trial.
Would you please state your name?
I'm sorry. Jean Childs, 7655 Clough Pike.
Thank you.
I always feel like I'm on trial trying to defend myself, and I'm tired of it. I'm sick of his defiance, his devious. He's making any kind of comments he can to stop this procedure. Well, it just so happens, in 1989, his son drew us up plans to build a garage. My deceased husband, before he passed away, we had a motorhome. It was going to be a 3-car garage, 36 by 36. He had no problem with that. His son drew this up. Now, he doesn't want anything there. I hope you don't. I hope you see through his maliciousness. Thank you very much.
Thank you. Does board have questions or comments to the appellant?
I have a few.
Please.
You state the property owner that wrote this letter, is that the property to the is it east?
Yes.
Okay. And then, this may not be relevant to your appeal, but did you state the garage is going to be over an existing easement?
It's going to be on the west side towards the easement.
Will it interfere with the easement?
No.
Okay.
We've got, as you can see from the driveway to the easement is probably, I would bet close to 150 or so odd feet just from the west side of the driveway. And that easement is all woods. And I cleared part of it out this fall because the one tree came down on our power lines. I talked to the people with Zika about taking that tree down, which we did. And I cleaned out the rest of the vines and everything that was killing the rest of the trees, which was fine with them. And we planted grass back in there. But these pictures here show what I'm putting up with. If you want to look at them, I'll give them to you. But where that garage is no way is going to be in anybody's way other than mine. I have to mow around it. So it's not a slap together looking thing either. And it adds value to the property, which adds tax base to the township. And in stating in that letter there, or email, he's stating that these houses behind me shouldn't have to look at it. Well, they shouldn't have to look at the no trespassing signs that he's got on his back property either. And he doesn't, the biggest thing, neither one of us should have to look at all the brush and junk in his yard, in the high grass, because he's just being that way. So, but if you want these, you can look at these. And I'm not dreaming this up.
These pictures are of his property?
His property.
I'm believing that they're not germane to the variance at hand.
Well, it's germane to it if you settle on what he's putting in this email and making me out the bad guy.
Okay.
And that's all it, if you want them, they're here. If you don't,
Okay.
we're cool.
Any other questions?
I had a couple.
Yeah.
For Mr.
Mr. Ellis.
Childs, I think, primarily. You mentioned at the beginning, and I had this question, but I just want to make sure I heard you correctly, that your use of that garage sounded to me like what you might see at a typical residence. You said you're going to have garden tools in there. Sounds like you do some woodworking. Can you tell us a little bit more about what your intentions are for the garage?
My intentions were, when we started this thing, we were infested with starlings over there. And I had a temporary, up by the house, I had a temporary canvas Logic garage for my pickup truck. I'd have to come out in the morning and wash that thing off every day from the bird droppings. We had upwards of 1 million birds in our backyard and over where they're building Foxbrook. Well, since they built Foxbrook, the birds have gone. I've taken the shelter down, and now I got spoiled with this truck being in this kind of weather. And I wanted to put this garage out there, and it would be out of the way, so when you back out of this garage on the house, you don't have a building to contend with. And then there is nowhere after that, the end of that driveway, to put it, because there's nothing but hills. It drops down, it goes down on the other side, and this would put that building in the people's backyards, and I know they paid $900 and some odd thousand dollars for
So you
that.
were wanting to put your pickup in there, basically?
Yes.
Anything else? I mean...
Maybe a lawn tractor, if it's good. That's it. See, he's comparing me, I've got access to construction equipment. I retired in June, and I sold my truck. The only other thing I have is this backhoe, and I keep it over at Pastoral Lane on the northern end of the township here, in an area behind my house, which I still own, with a large garage, and that's where that backhoe stays unless I use it.
Could you even fit a backhoe in there? It doesn't look like you could.
No, you couldn't. The backhoe is probably 9, 10 feet
Yeah, it's hot.
on the hood, or on the roof.
So we're talking about putting your vehicle in it,
That's it.
a lawnmower,
Whatever you got, it's
what you have in a garage.
what you have in a garage, and you're able to walk in and out of it.
Now, the driveway, it drops off a little bit. Is this going to be down lower, or is it flat there?
No,
Okay.
right there, it's going to drop off about 1.5 feet.
So you go down a little bit and then...
And then
into
it
the garage.
flattens out all the way to the easement. And we wouldn't be anywhere near the easement. There's power lines back there, so you can't get back too far, because the building would be under the power lines.
Okay,
So,
thanks.
in the,
You know, I wouldn't mind, I hear what you're, I wouldn't mind actually looking at those pictures since you brought them. I guess we'd have to take those into evidence. I'd be curious to see them.
I just have to deal with this all the time, not just...
And then I'll just pass them down.
Okay.
Thank you.
Other questions?
I don't have any problem with that. But I'm just showing you what I'm putting up with. If he wants to live like that, that's his price, that's his house.
Thank you.
So the property that your neighbor thought was his, after you had it surveyed, turned out to be yours
Yeah.
in front? Okay.
He had his property was surveyed twice. The last time he had it surveyed, he had it surveyed by the people that did Foxbrook. He didn't trust ours. He didn't trust his first one. So he had the third one. Well, our first one, his third one are exactly on the money.
In that picture that we see up there, was that from, did you say you're getting it from Menards or somebody?
It's a Menard, come out of Menard's book.
It's basically going to look like that, right?
That's almost it. I want to move the garage door to an off-center, so you have one side of that building to work in.
So that kind of color and stuff is...
It's going to be vinyl. It's going to be shingled roof. It's going to have a cupola on it. So, I mean, that's
Like a
basically
little
what it...
decorative thing on the top?
Yeah, yeah.
Okay, thanks.
I mean,
I don't have
it's...
any more questions.
Thank you.
Mr. Chairman, I have one question for the appellant. Sir, when we consider variances, part of what we need to consider is what are the alternatives and what are the difficulties in the alternatives. I know you said that you didn't want to put it in the backyard because of the effect of the appearance of the $900,000 houses, but is there a physical problem?
Yes, yes.
What is it?
First of all,
I understand.
when you drop off at the back of the driveway, it goes down about 10 feet, down into a gully. That's where all the water from his property comes down. I've put French drains in. I had to put a 12-inch drain under the driveway that goes to that back building. If you go to the back building, then the topography, or whatever you want to call it, goes uphill again. And that goes back to their retention pond. The rest of it, there's 1, 2, 3, there's 5 big trees back there. That's what I was saying. They're probably between 50 and 100 feet tall. They're big maple shade trees. And you'd have to deal with them. And putting it in the backyard would just be a mess. So,
But from the sounds of it, it would be feasible except for the drainage.
the drainage and the trees. These trees are probably, take 3 of us to put our arms around them. These aren't little trees. Little trees don't bother me. Big trees scare the heck out of me.
Thank you.
Any other questions? If I may, I have a couple. You have an existing garage on the house,
It's in the house, yes.
2-car?
Yes.
And what do you have in that garage?
Her car.
And,
This is a dually pickup truck. It doesn't fit in there. That's what pulls that 5th-wheel trailer.
okay,
That's already been discussed. If you would put that in there, you would need a shoehorn to get around it.
okay, so it's the size of
The
the,
size of the vehicle.
okay,
And inside that garage, there's a workbench and storage shelves. She's got a Honda 4CV. This is a Dodge Dually, and it's a crew cab.
okay.
It's over 20 feet long. So putting it in there is a no-no.
Okay. Good. Any other questions?
I do have one more.
Yeah, Mr. Hayes.
You mentioned that the drawings that you submitted are not really what you intend to put in.
That was when I put it up here. The only thing that would be changed is the distance from that driveway, and instead of being square to the driveway, it'd be on a slight angle facing the house. That is the only difference. Nothing else. Same garage. It just, it would have a different shaped drive to it. And that's what I told Allison when I came up here and gave that to him. Before anything would be done, if this variance was approved, you would have a full set of prints and plans, and if there's anything you didn't like, it could be changed.
Thank you.
Okay. Any other questions of the appellant? Thank you, sir. Going on, is anybody who wants to speak in favor of the appeal? Anybody who wants to speak in opposition of the appeal? Well, then, hearing no further comments, and if there's no objection from the board, I'm going to close this public hearing on Case 4-2015 BZA. And again, we're going to go back at this point, back to our earlier case, and consider and deliberate on these cases tonight. So, thank you all. Going to case number 3-2015 BZA. Would anybody like to start us off on Discussion.
I think I'm in agreement with the staff findings on that one. I've driven by the house several times and never, didn't seem obtrusive or never thought it was out of character, so as long as it stays as is, I don't see any problem.
Okay.
Yeah, I'd say, I'd echo Mr. Johnson's comments, but add this. That was one really important one for me to go see it. And what made that fence work was the fence. It was and I just learned it's cedar, it's nice looking, and actually if you look, it fits in with those pine trees really nicely in the neighborhood. It's a lovely neighborhood. Now, and I think that's important. I think that's a condition the board should consider of the materials and maybe even the staining of the fence. Because if that was a more modern type fence, say a white vinyl fence, I'm not so sure it would work there. And we heard from the applicant, Mr. Reed, that was important to him when he replaced it, that it be a nice fence, that it fit in. He was very concerned with how it's going to work in his with his neighborhood and his neighbors, and he's lived there for a long time. But as we all know, if you grant a variance, unless you condition it with something as to the materials, you know, there could be another owner someday. It could change. So I would support it for sure, but with a little bit of conditions on the materials. Otherwise, I do think he does meet necessary hardship criteria to have that.
Okay.
I agree as well. I think there's little use of that backyard. It's a positioning of the lot somewhat needed to enjoy it. There's certainly a use for the property without it, but I agree that the fence is good looking, well maintained, and fits nicely. So I would be in agreement as well.
Brad, anything?
Complete agreement.
Okay. Yeah, we've got a corner lot situation here, which challenges us from a front yard and a rear yard. And I have to agree with the sentiments so far that to pull that fence back is to make the rear yard, what they're trying to use, basically unusable, to enclose just the pool area. And I certainly think that creates a hardship for them. So I'm in agreement with you all as well. So do we, somebody like to take a stab at a motion here?
Mr. Chairman, I move in case number 3-2015 BZA, the property located at 6906 Gamwell Drive, that this board vote to grant the variance requested for a fence, an existing fence, a 6-foot privacy fence, and a variance from section 171.9 of the Anderson Township zoning resolution. I would state that the property in question will yield a reasonable return, but may not yield as much return if we did not approve this variance. Essentially, the variance is not substantial. The character of the neighborhood would not be substantially altered with continuing with the fence. The variance would not adversely affect the delivery of government services. The property owner's predicament cannot be feasibly obviated through some other method other than the variance, and the spirit and intent behind the zoning requirement would be observed, and substantial justice done by granting the variance. Would also state that or propose that the materials and the condition of the fence be kept in essentially the current form and condition.
Second.
Okay, on case number 3-2015, we have a motion to approve the variance, and we have a second. Is there any additional discussion by the board?
I just say I appreciate that condition on that the board is approving that subject to keeping those same types of materials, the wood, the double-sided fence, the good neighbor fence as it was called, and the coloring of it so it fits into the neighborhood. So I think that motion was very well stated.
Good. Anything else? Can we call for the roll?
Fred Hayes,
Aye.
Brian Johnson,
Aye.
Brian Elk,
Aye.
Christopher Houston,
Aye.
Stephen Hager.
Aye. We've approved the variance request. Thank you so much. As far as administrative, there's,
They typically journalize decisions. Microphone on. They journalize decisions this same evening, so you can stick around and watch them actually sign it, or not. It's up to you.
yeah, when we get done with the next case, we will actually journalize it, and you can come and get a copy of it, or you can wait tonight and get a copy of it as well. But thank you so much.
And I'll write up the zoning certificate for you and give you a call when that's ready, and then you're good.
Good. Okay, thanks so much.
Thank you.
Okay, moving on to case number 4-2015 BZA at 7655 Clough Pike.
Yeah, I think I'll jump in there, I guess. I think most of my questions were answered. I mean, the picture to me says it all. That's a residential character garage. I heard his testimony. He needs that pickup wouldn't fit in my garage. I know what he's talking about. He needs, lots of people have these additional vehicles. He pulls the camper around. Needs a place to put it. Needs a place to put his truck, put the other stuff. And I believe what the applicant is telling us, and having looked at that the backyard doesn't work very well on that lot. And it's a large lot. It's this garage structure is not going to overburden that lot. He's putting it off to the side. And it's a decent-looking structure. It's not out of the ordinary. It's not, doesn't have a bunch of big, huge doors on it like the drawing Mrs. Childs shows. And then I would also add, I drove up that driveway, as you guys probably did, and then I backed down that driveway, and unless you're a skilled operator, which maybe Mr. Childs is, I'm not seeing a lot of heavy, big-time equipment going in and out of there. And, you know, there are people that have a backhoe that they come and they work on their property, and then their backhoe goes away. And, you know, I know that can be disconcerting if you see a backhoe show up. I had a new drain put in my driveway, and there was a backhoe in the driveway for a few days and caught a lot of people's attention, but then it goes away. And the zoning, it's zoned residential. If there's any use issues that come up, then that's an enforcement issue. But it looked like it makes sense, and I definitely heard some hardship criteria there. That seems like the placement of it makes some sense to me.
Mr. Chairman, I think it's important for this board to address the issue of the apparent adjacent neighbors conflict that we have become aware of in the case about a year ago. The same issues came up. It's important for us to consider this from the standpoint of the feud between the neighbors is not the governing driving force in this decision. The driving force is the need for the structure, the selection of a good appearance structure rather than leaving the truck out in the open. This is going to provide a better appearance of the neighborhood, keep the neighborhood up. It cannot be properly located in the backyard without affecting the natural drainage of the entire area. And so I am in favor of granting this variance, subject to some more detailed drawings of where it is going to be placed and how it is going to be constructed. And frankly, I'm not sure whether we can say that it's up to the staff to approve those drawings. If it is, then I'm comfortable in moving ahead.
Do you want?
You're okay?
We
Okay.
can do it at the staff level, or if you would like me to come back and whenever you're done.
No, I'm okay as long as you're comfortable approving it.
I was going to say the same thing. I'm not opposed to the location or the use, but because there was some testimony that it might be at a different angle or not exactly the way it is
Yeah,
presented
if
to
something
us.
substantial were to change, it were to be located on the opposite side of the driveway or suddenly at the front of the lot or something like that, obviously staff would not approve it, but if it's the angle and shifting more towards the western property line in accordance with testimony, staff would be fine with that.
Actually, the further it is towards the west is probably more favorable and it's closer to the woods anyhow.
Yeah, this is another interesting lot, and honestly, I don't like the idea of garages and front yards, but the lot is essentially all front yard. There's a healthy amount of tree line blocking the garage from the road, so really, we have a letter here from the neighbor, which really the only reason it's relevant is that there's opposition to the variance, although the rest of it's just totally irrelevant. I would like to see, I guess I could be for this, I would like to see some limitations that just be a standard garage door. Nothing more than what I believe 7 feet is standard. Nothing higher than that. Would that, I would assume that would be enough to get his truck in there. What I don't want to see is one of these garages that you can park a camper in with a 15-foot or whatever, how high the door is. I wouldn't want to see that. That's really all I have to say on it.
Mr. Elf, do you have any comments?
No more comments.
Okay.
Thank you.
A year ago, we looked at an appeal on the same property to park the camper in the same, basically the same location. And as I remember, there was a lot of concern as to the construction and the varying what am I trying to say, varying options that were presented to this board as to construction, screening, and a number of things that this board, I believe at that time, concluded that we weren't here to design what the appellant was trying to do. And I feel that given the drawings that we have right now, that if we don't provide those kinds of limitations that we're talking about, that it's a residential size, that the door is 8 feet high or whatever, that if we don't put the limitations on it, I mean, we've already, the appellant already made testimony that he wanted to put a cupola on top, which isn't shown. So I'm afraid that given what we have, there's a couple things. One is, what I hear from the board is we're not opposed to there being located an accessory structure in the front yard. However, I'm not sure, and I haven't been given enough information to understand exactly what it is. I do know that it's 25 by 30 or 20 by 30, and there's some change, there's some discrepancies in the documentation on what the size is. We're talking about angling it a little different. And I'm concerned that and I'm throwing this out, that we could approve the variance and provide enough conditions on it so that we provide a contained envelope for the appellant to go on and continue the design, or we table this and ask for additional information, so that because, and again, I go back to that appeal back with the camper, was that there was a lot of variations in what was being presented, and we specifically said it's not up to us to determine what, what the appellant is going to do. Thoughts on that?
You all did close the public hearing already, so tabling it would not allow for additional testimony at the following meeting.
Can we open it back up?
Well, you think about that, I just,
Yeah.
to distinguish this from the last case is, as I look at the materials that have been provided here, I'm not seeing any surprises here as what we would approve tonight, with maybe a few, comments about the size of the garage, except that it might be shifted a little bit so the driveway is more angled towards the house. Otherwise, if the appellant came back with something that wasn't that, other than the cupola, that staff would say, well, that's not consistent with what you approved, and you have to go back. As opposed to when we were talking about the trailer, we didn't really have anything to go on. It was a concrete slab. I don't recollect we knew what the trailer looked like necessarily. There were more unknowns to that, to me, than there are here. I think the drawing is not bad, actually, if it just says going to want to turn it. It's not like if you see the side of that building, it's a big deal, as opposed to, what he's showing us is, on this drawing, is probably the worst-case scenario, which is the garage door, okay?
Mm-hmm.
If you see the corner or the side or the door, it's just, I don't see that makes a difference.
Okay.
So I guess I'm saying I think there's enough here that I wouldn't think more detailed drawings would change my opinion.
Well, I mean, what we're doing is we're authorizing staff to come up with what those conditions may be, given what we have here.
Yeah, right. And the extent of that basically is turning the building a little bit,
Mhm.
I think.
Mhm.
That's what I'm thinking, and a cupola.
I guess I would lean more towards the conditions, and this would be as a benefit to the applicant. If we waited another month, I'm guessing that part of the reason he wants to do this is to cover the vehicle for the winter, and that would be a month of extra, where it would be outside, and so it'd be nicer, I guess, if he could start on it sooner
Mhm.
than, have it finished 6 weeks from now or whatever, instead of 2 or 3.
Okay.
What's the staff opinion of whether we can reopen it or not?
There's nothing in the bylaws.
There what?
There's nothing in the
Nothing in the
bylaws.
bylaws.
I think we've done it before,
I
haven't we?
think you
Where you
can
have,
reopen it and request.
it's like, oh, I wish I had some more information, and just reopen it.
Right.
Kind of specify what it is you want.
Right. Until we get into the discussion and deliberation part, we may not know what we need. Anyone want to take a stab at creating a motion in favor, and then we'll chime in with various conditions?
I'll try and make a motion, maybe this will be satisfactory. In case number 4-2015 BZA, requesting a variance from section 171.7 of the Anderson Township Resolution to allow a 24 by 30 detached garage within the front yard area. I move that the board approve the request, finding that although the property in question will yield a reasonable return without the variance, we've heard testimony that this actually may be of a benefit to some of the surrounding owners, whereas this placement is taking advantage of the large size of the property rather than trying to push it into the backyard area, which actually is closer and it would have greater impact on the neighbors. And further, that the variance requested is not substantial, in particular due to the great size of the lot. This is not going to be too much for that lot to absorb, that anybody's even going to notice it. And it's largely not visible from the front street, passing by traffic, which is one of the reasons why you limit these things in the front yard. The essential character of the neighborhood would not be substantially altered, and properties will not suffer a substantial detriment as a result of the variance, in particular because the garage that's being proposed is of a residential character, not unusual for any residential lot we would typically see within Anderson Township. And the variance would not adversely affect the delivery of government services. It's not impeding the drive area or anything like that. Property owner's predicament cannot be feasibly obviated through some other method. In particular, on this one, we heard that as far as the hardship criteria go, that there is significant slope issues, drainage issues, existing vegetation, all that impact where you would traditionally look for this kind of structure to be in the rear yard. So he's got some real hardship criteria, and like I said, the lot is, it makes sense in this particular case, unique setup of this lot to place it in the front. Spirit and intent behind the zoning requirements would be observed and substantial justice done if we would grant the variance. And I'd further offer these conditions, that the building substantially follow the appearance and dimensions of the building as was shown in the materials, in particular the photograph of the proposed building, and that the garage door on that building be of customary size and height for residential type use, as opposed to accommodating larger or taller structures. And further, that the plans and drawings submitted be followed, with the exception that staff would have latitude to accept the garage being placed at a different angle than what is shown on the drawing. And lastly, that the building would be allowed to have a cupola structure that we haven't seen in here placed on it, as long as it's reasonably in scale to the subject building. That's it.
Second.
We have a motion and a second granting the variance, case number 4-2015 BZA. Is there any other discussion?
Mr. Chairman and Mr. Eliff, I would propose friendly amendments to it, that we state that as an additional consideration that detailed plans be drawn up and submitted to staff prior to beginning actual construction, that actual construction begin within 1 year and be completed within 2 years.
Yes, I'd accept that amendment.
Okay. Any other discussion? And call the roll.
Fred Hayes.
Aye.
Brian Johnson.
Aye.
Brian Ellis.
Aye.
Christopher Houston.
Aye.
Steve Hager.
Aye. You granted your variance. Thank you very much. We are going to take a brief recess at this point, and we will get back together, and we are going to journalize and approve these cases yet tonight.
You want to see that garage, there's one on one side, 2 houses east, that goes out.
Okay.
Same as the...
Can I hang on to the pictures and give them back to you?
Thank you, gentlemen. Take a recess. Good work.
Sounds good.
Thanks.
You did nice. I like the way that you opened it up more.
All right, so we are back in session.
Should number 1 say that the property in question would not yield a reasonable return without the variance, and that the rear yard would not be able to be utilized? Am I reading that?
Well, an associated change, I think, is we don't state here that it's an existing fence. Can we think about adding in the 4th line there at the end of it to allow an existing 6-foot-high privacy fence to continue to be located within the front yard? Does that address your concern, Mr. Ellis? Does it make it better?
Well, I was actually on number 1 in the...
Yeah.
Number 1 in the...
Do we even need that sentence?
No, I think it was pointed out that the backyard, if you move that fence back with the pool there, the backyard would be unusable to a large degree. So I would reword, say the property, let's see, in order for the property in question to yield a reasonable return, to allow the use, the variances is necessary in order to use the rear yard, something like that.
Or more
Am I
reasonable
getting
return?
too hung up on this?
No,
I agree with you. It doesn't-
I think you're right.
doesn't read right.
Try,
Reasonable return is the variance?
or would yield a far less return if the variance were not granted.
Let's go with what she just wrote there and try this. In order to yield a reasonable return, the variance is necessary so that the practical use of the rear yard area is available.
So that a practical use of the rear yard is available.
Yeah.
Did I get that right?
Yes.
Good?
At the end of number 3, there's a period. The fence has existed in this location for many years, period. Yep.
And all of the neighbors support, we heard testimony that all the neighbors supported the granting of the variance. Property owners, good.
The
Good.
variance. Yep, there we go. Yep. Okay, so we go ahead and say more of it in 5, that's good. Anything else?
Just a quick second. I would add in 2, the variance is not substantial in light of the unique configuration of this corner lot, something like that. Okay.
Good. Yep.
Ready to scroll down?
Yep.
Should we say it should continue to be stained wood? Because it already is.
Sure, yeah.
I guess the concern is this fence coming down, someone else coming in and putting up another fence. So any fence under the, constructed or existing under this variance must be, you think that's necessary? Or?
Yeah, I think it's a good restriction, is that
Okay.
it stays that way.
Is there more?
Yes, or more?
Just to say, as far as good neighbor style, should we just put in brackets, that means that it has a finished appearance on the outside, on the exterior? Okay, yeah.
Good.
Okay.
I've never heard it called that before, but that's kind of.
No,
a good
neither.
description.
That is, we get a lot of applications with that.
They call it that.
Good neighbor?
We don't require it.
It's a requirement in some places.
That's just our
Yeah,
standard.
it is. if they have
You
finished
might want to go back up to 1 real quick. I guess it maybe doesn't make sense. The fence shall continue to be constructed, continue to exist.
How
and
about
any future
maintained?
fence shall be
Maintained.
Yeah,
constructed.
take out the constructed. Or-
How about maintained instead of constructed?
Continue to be maintained.
So just take constructed and
You
say
should say the
maintained.
fence, but his point is, I think I like the addition, the fence and any future fence.
Yeah,
Go
to
back
prov-
to constructed and do the fence in any future.
Yeah,
Fence.
well, just, yeah, and any future fence, just to be clear.
yeah, that's
Okay,
what
that's
I
good.
was, that's
Okay,
what I was
that's
looking
good.
for.
Anything else?
And it seems weird that with it, they continue to be constructed. It just seems odd.
How would you say that?
Well, my suggestion was the existing fence shall be maintained and any future fence must be constructed of a stained wood and be of a good neighbor
A
variety.
similar style.
The existing fence shall be maintained.
And any future fence shall be constructed.
Okay. That's a little cleaner, isn't
Yeah.
Should that be abstained with?
Yeah.
That's beautiful.
it? That looks good.
Great. Do we have a motion to approve and journalize? Anything else?
We're set. Mr. Chairman, I move that this board approve and journalize case number 3-2, 2015 BZA.
Second.
We have a motion and a second to approve and journalize case 3-2015 BZA. Any other discussion? Would you please call the roll?
Fred Hayes,
Aye?
Brian Johnson,
Aye.
Brian Ellis,
Aye.
Christopher Halston,
Aye.
Steve Hayward.
Aye. Super. Then going on to 4-2015.
Ready.
Same thing.
Yeah.
Okay.
I'm ready to scroll.
Yep.
So can we maybe change that number 1 to be worded a little bit like the number 1 we just did in the other? Yeah. Yes.
It may not be exactly analogous, though. This is in fact adding value and increasing the return of the property by granting this variance.
Yeah, you could say that while the property currently yields a reasonable return, and then add to that.
I'm okay with it as it's worded, but if you guys have something better, because I can't think of something.
What did you have before there, Allison? Without going back and... Property in question will yield a reasonable return with the variance.
It currently yields a reasonable return. But
Yeah, I agree, Brian.
Property in question will yield an added return with the variance. A detached garage will add additional storage and use to the property.
But the only comment I have on that is, that's irrelevant, I think, to what we look at.
Right.
Because then, I mean, we don't have to meet all 6 of these to grant, so we can say, you know,
You
that
can
it,
take the whole thing out.
that, hey, it, you know, yields a reasonable return. I don't know, just a thought.
I think it should be, while the property currently yields a reasonable return, and then say that this does add to it, I mean, or take it out.
I can go either way.
Yeah, it doesn't matter.
Well, why don't we just say it adds a reasonable return? The variance allows for a practical use of this property, something like that. The granting of the variance provides for a practical use of this property.
Everybody good with it? Anything else in those 6 items? We good to go? Then let's go down to the conditions. All right.
I think we need to say that that's going to conform to the drawing as well, or the photograph, but for the cupola, proposed cupola structure, which will be in scale with the building.
January 16th.
CU something.
Do you need to say that, wouldn't that be not substantial? I mean, that would be substantial if it were.
How about, can we also reference the plan, the site plan, in that same number 1, with the image and plan, right?
Good.
I don't think
Yep.
You don't think you need to mention the cupola?
And in number 2, can we add detailed plans reflecting the location and the proposed angle of the structure?
As well as any architectural features, that includes the cupola.
And on number 3, can we be more specific about oversized? Maybe I like the language you were using regarding restricted to a residential size.
Typical residential
Typical,
size and
yeah.
character.
Just as a litigator, I see words like oversized, and it makes me smile.
Well, he's talking about putting his truck in there,
Yeah.
and he says he can't get his truck into the existing garage.
Because of its width, the dually.
Gotcha.
Yeah, I didn't see, when I was referencing, I didn't see any, look on his face that would seem to oppose that.
Okay.
Because I thought, I want him to be able to fit his truck in there, but I certainly don't want the 15-foot garage door.
Okay. Any additions to the conditions that we have here?
I think those are the right ones.
Anything else?
I'm going to close the gap in the be it further resolved. Second one, there's a gap between deliberations of this board. Yep.
Nope, no, I don't have anything else.
Motion?
Mr. Chair, in case BZA 4-2015, I move that the board approve and journalize as submitted.
Second.
Case number 4-2015, we have a motion to approve and journalize, and we have a second. Is there any other discussion? If you can call the roll, please.
Fred Hayes.
Aye.
Brian Johnson.
Aye.
Brian Ellis.
Aye.
Christopher Houston.
Aye.
Steve Hager.
Aye. Any other matters to come before this board? Motion to adjourn.
So moved.
Second.
Yeah, second. All in favor, signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Let's rock and roll. Thank you, gentlemen.
Very well done, Mr. Chairman.